Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya from the Abuja studio. Good morning, Adefemi.
Femi Femo.
Good morning, Adefemi.
That's me.
Oh, we miss you. We miss you physically
morning,
in the studio.
Good morning, Ayo.
And it looks weird you sitting. We're so used to you standing to deliver the news.
Yeah.
This is it. This is it. You know, you're sitting down. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel complete. I'll be back with you soon. I had to handle some business in Abuja, but I'll be with you very, very soon.
Right,
and I'm actually very happy and surprised to hear that Ijoma, our own very own Madam Ijoma, will be turning 60. I couldn't believe my eyes when all my ears when I heard that. So, hey, we're looking forward to that. But nevertheless, let me tell you what is happening around the world. Now, 11 Nigerian military personnel are currently being held by the Burkina Faso military regime in Bobo Dioulasso in southwest Burkina Faso, and that's after allegedly violating the Alliance of Sahel States airspace. Now, the military in Burkina Faso says that Nigeria's C-130 aircraft was forced to land, that it had 2 crew members and 9 passengers, all of them military personnel. Now, Burkina Faso authorities say that the aircraft did not have authorization to fly over its territory, and that it also has the authority to neutralize any aircraft that violates the confederal airspace it controls. So very serious things happening there. Still on the African continent, and we have Rwandan President Paul Kagame. He has accused his Congolese counterpart Felix Tshisekedi of manipulation. Now, if you remember, just when we were all thinking that perhaps relations between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo were warming following the signing of the Washington Accords for Peace and Prosperity last Friday, in an interview with Al Jazeera, Paul Kagame said that he sought to prioritize African problems being solved by African-led solutions. Essentially, he didn't want any foreign intervention. However, Tshisekedi had other plans. He said that it was Tshisekedi that involved the likes of Qatar and the United States into their African business. Let's take a listen to what Paul Kagame had to say.
Even with the US, it was his own request. And in fact, the other African leaders and countries were blaming Rwanda, thinking that we are the ones who left the African processes, initiatives, and went to Qatar or came here to Washington. But it was the very man, Tshisekedi, DRC, who actually initiated that. But the hope for him was he would be able to manipulate either the process in Qatar or the process in Washington, D.C. in his favor, because he thinks DRC is too great, too big, that the whole world is interested in having a portion of what they possess. Even with the US, it was his own request. And in fact,
well, you did hear what Kagame had to say there. He did say that he remains hopeful that this peace still between Rwanda and the DRC will last. We are still in Africa. And in the meantime, Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara has started his 4th 5-year term in office following his inauguration in Abidjan on Monday with the support of the United States, which says that the Ivory Coast is a politically stable country. Now, the swearing in did take place inside the presidential palace in the Ivorian capital. 11 African presidents attended, including our own representative, Kashim Shettima. Of course, that's the vice president of Nigeria. You also had the likes of Adama Barrow, many other African leaders. But there was also Jacob Helberg. He is the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Economic Affairs, and he said that the United States is not in the business of telling people how to run their country. I think many countries may beg to differ, but he did go on to add that he thinks that the Ivory Coast is politically stable, despite the fact that we know 11 people were killed and nearly 2,000 others were detained during violence surrounding the October 25th election. election, which essentially we saw all main rivals blocked from posing a proper opposition. Now, Ouattara's first came to power after winning a disputed election back in 2010 against his predecessor, Laurent Gbagbo. Now, Ouattara himself did oversee a referendum that changed the constitution in 2016 and then again in 2020. He said that he amended the constitution to reset his office to 0, which his opponents have rejected ever since. Now, supporters of Ouattara say that they credit him with restoring the economy in the world's largest cocoa producer, but critics have accused him of tightening his grip on power. Well, moving on to Europe now. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that talks with European leaders in London were productive. That's as he continues his efforts towards an end to Russia's invasion in his country. Now, he joined forces with the E3, that is, of course, Keir Starmer of the United Kingdom, that is French President Emmanuel Macron, and that is also the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. All of them have Zelensky saying that a 20-point proposal from Ukraine and Europe for a peace deal would be ready by this evening in order for them to share with the United States. Now, the issue of territory is still the most problematic point of these discussions so far, especially when we're talking about ending the war. To that effect, you've got the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen saying that the bloc that she is in control of, the European Commission, it does have the means and it has the will to increase pressure on Russia to come to the negotiating table. Now, looking across the pond to the United States and seeing what Donald Trump has to say about what's happening in Europe, he's actually focusing on Europe's issues with mass migration. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Look, Europe has to be very careful. They're doing a lot of things. We want to keep Europe Europe. Europe is going in some bad directions. It's very bad for the people. We don't want Europe to change so much. You're going in some very bad direction.
Let's take a look at our newspaper headline before I throw to you for your comments. Now, if you take a look at the front page of This Day newspaper does lead with and reports with the fact that after weeks of tension, the United States has eased its tough stance on Nigeria after meetings with the National Security Advisor Nuhu Ribadu, as well as with US lawmakers led by Riley Moore, described the talks as positive and supportive of stronger security cooperation. Now, President Tinubu also praised security agencies for rescuing 100 abducted Niger school children and ordered the safe return of the remaining victims, some 115 of them. Today is Tuesday. As ever, let's take a look at The Advocate by Onikepo Braithwaite. Now, this week's edition of The Advocate does highlight how Nigeria's security or worsening insecurity has drawn US attention in the first place. Now, she's prompting stronger government action, and she also criticizes past leaders for ignoring terrorism and banditry. She went on to praise the appointment of Christopher Musa as our new defense minister, while also condemning Abia State Governor Alex Ochi's visit to convicted terrorist Nnamdi Kanu. Now, the Daily Sun today does report that nationwide outrage is building. That is as killings are surging across Anambra, Benue, Imo, and other states. Now, gunmen have killed 5 people and burnt a church. Vehicles in Anambra also were burned. This has prompted police in the state to launch a manhunt and blame cult groups for the attacks. Now, the army also reported killing 9 protesters in Adamawa as security tensions escalate. Now, nationwide, that's happening. Moving on to the Leadership paper this morning. The Leadership does go on to report that those 100 rescued Niger school children said that they were kept near a river and threatened with guns if they made any noise. Now, the NSA military and DSS coordinated the operation, which actually handed them over safely to the governor of Niger State, Umar Bago, who thanked President Tinubu and assured the people that the remaining 115 abductees would be rescued. Also on the front page of the Leadership, there are reports that the former governor of Kano State, Rabiu Kwankwaso, warns that the untrained state vigilante groups could be fueling the spread of small arms across Nigeria. Now, the New Telegraph this morning has the federal government, the Federal High Court actually in Abuja, refusing IPOB leader Nnamdi Kanu's request to transfer from Sokoto prison to a facility here in Abuja or in nearby or neighboring Nasarawa state. Now, Justice James Omotosho ordered that Kanu refile the application as a motion on notice, with the next hearing scheduled for the 27th of January 2026. Now, the Daily Independent this morning has Nigeria's foreign reserves rising to $44.7 billion in November 2025. However, the Naira has weakened to 1.8%. It weakened by 1.8%, and that is due to end-of-year foreign exchange demand. Now, if we move over to our UK papers, The Times this morning does have UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer believing that a deal to release £100 billion of frozen Russian assets to help Ukraine is only days away from happening. That's according to The Times. And we've got the Financial Times, which leads with the Paramount executives really hitting back with an all-cash offer, and that is as it's trying to derail Netflix purchase of the Warner Brothers. Those are your newspaper headlines from across Nigeria and the world, and of course the World Brief. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
All right, Adifem, I just want to quickly take a press release signed by the Air Commodore, Director of Public Relations and Information at the Nigerian Air Force, just to clarify that story that's making the rounds around Burkina Faso detaining some of our soldiers. The title is Safe Precautionary Landing of NAF C-130 Aircraft in Burkina Faso. The Nigerian Air Force wishes to clarify reports regarding the diversion of a NAF C-130 aircraft during its ferry mission to Portugal on 8th December 2025. Following takeoff from Lagos, the crew observed a technical concern which necessitated a precautionary landing in Bobo Dioulasso, Burkina Faso, the nearest airfield in accordance with standard safety procedures and international aviation protocols. NAF crew is safe and have received cordial treatment from the host authorities. Plans are ongoing to resume the mission as scheduled. The Nigerian Air Force appreciates the support received during this period and assures the public that NAF remains professionally committed to strict compliance with operational procedures and safety standards, ensuring the protection of its personnel while fulfilling its constitutional mandate. I believe, of course, they had to release that statement just to clarify that it's not as it's being reported widely, but the fact that they had to make a safe precautionary landing as opposed to them being detained by Burkina Faso
that's
government.
what the Burkinabe military had said last night. So what Nigeria is saying is kind of contravening what the people of Burkina Faso have said so far. So it is good to hear what Nigeria have said, but they're not really speaking with the same voice, are they?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you very much, Adefemi. And that statement from Nigeria is signed by Ehime Ejodame, Air Commodore, Director of Public Relations and Information, Headquarters, Nigerian Air Force. Thank you very much indeed.